my name is Anna and today I want to share this June bullet journal setup with you. This is kind of a loose recreation of one of my older themes, so the main inspiration is a fairy tale Paris, and we're gonna use most of the decoration time on this big detailed painting that goes on the cover spread, and then move on to the planning content a little bit later in the video. This is one of those paintings that I wanted to spend some extra effort on, and even though I'll need to speed up the process slightly, I still want to show you all the steps and how you can approach a painting like this on your own. So I'm actually gonna paint this in a little bit larger size in my real B5 watercolor sketchbook and then print out a smaller size for the journal. My notebook technically has watercolor paper, but it's nowhere near the quality we need for a bigger painting like this that will require lots of layering, blending, and so on. But anyway, the first step was to create a pencil sketch, which I will mostly skip in this video. It took quite a while and for the most part you can barely see anything, but what I focused on in this sketch was the window frame, because we will definitely need a guide to keep all the lines even and centered. I was using this violet colored pencil that I thought would blend in with the painting better than a regular pencil. I also needed this sketch to be dark enough that it would still show through the first layers of gouache paints, so that's why I made some of these main lines a little bit darker than usual. But now that the sketch is out of the way, let's move on to the painting phase. All the tools and final colors I'm using are listed in the description, and we're starting this time with a flat brush and painting the sky. I know it might look a little bit wild that I'm just whipping the sky colors all over the painting and over the sketches, but it's simply because these will be the lightest colors and they will be covered or blended in here on the edges with something darker, so it doesn't really matter that these colors get everywhere. Also with gouache paints you can cover even darker areas with lighter tones, so there's that as well. I was trying to use a little bit more water in the paints than usual, just to, again, avoid these sketches from being fully covered. Gouache paints are very pigmented, but you can also use them kind of as watercolors if you add a lot of water to them. They still won't perform exactly the same way as watercolors. For example, it will be much harder to create an even color transition with wet on wet technique, and the colors often end up quite splotchy no matter how much you try to blend them. But anyway, I actually didn't have the best start to this painting. For some reason I was really indecisive and was struggling to find a color combination for the sky I liked. And of course, while blending all these colors, everything started to look a bit muddy. The danger of working together with blue and yellow in the sky is that things very easily end up green, so that's something to keep in mind. The colors need to be quite separated. So I tried to add some fresh, brighter layers while still trying not to cover all the sketches. I also experimented by adding some clouds to the sky, which I didn't really like either. I think my paints underneath were still a bit too wet, so adding the clouds created some separation and bold spots. It wasn't really pretty, so I ended up kind of smoothing out those with the most part. And I was also having a bit hard time finding colors for the city and the window frame. It's still really hard for me sometimes to accept that the start of any gouache painting is gonna look ugly. We're just working on these base layers at this point and everything can be defined and polished later. The sky ended up looking perfectly fine after all the other details were on the page too, so I was just giving myself a hard time for no reason. But anyway, something I really wanted to focus on with this painting was the contrast between warm and cool colors, which I think creates a beautiful early sunset-like appearance when there are those warm glimmers of color, but also some shadows that are typically more cool toned. I feel like this is quite an advanced method for me. I haven't experimented with something like this much, but I felt like I wanted to push myself with this painting to hopefully achieve the look I had in my mind. Also, in general, I wanted the colors to be a bit more out there this time. In my previous Paris theme, I was using very neutral colors. So this time, I wanted there to be this almost fantasy storybook vibe to create a very romantic end result. This painting will be for my next shop launch, which is coming out at the beginning of June, and the collection won't necessarily have any fantasy elements, but these blue, light pink and lilac tones work well with the overall color scheme of the collection, so that was also one reason I wanted to go with something like this. Painting the window frame and other interior details definitely required some slow work, and I was very dependent on the sketch underneath. At this stage, I also started to worry that the whole painting would turn out too blue. While painting all these shadows and frame details, I felt a little bit stuck with the blue tones because I didn't know what else to use for everything to still look cohesive. I mixed some black and lilac here and there, but still the overall color is just very blue. However, it will get a bit better when we add all the flower details and finalize this painting in the last polishing phase, and I will also do some final edits to this on a computer to get it more to what I was imagining in my mind. But now that many of the overall details of the painting are taking shape, we can start to paint some flowers to add a bit more color and visual interest. I still mixed blue with most of the green tones to not make these flowers look super out of place, but I also added some much lighter and brighter greenish yellow colors for the highlights. Again, I was just trying different colors together, trying to mix some cool and warm tones, and if it doesn't work, you can always just cover up those areas. I think painting leaves and flowers with gouache paints is the easiest if you start from the darker colors, apply them almost as a background layer, and then start to go over with lighter shades to create sharper leaf shapes and naturally layered look to the plants. Then the actual flowers are just big blobs of color. There's really no technique for this style. I just used a little bit thinner brush and some lighter colors to add a bit of lines and details to the middle. And I think that works perfectly fine for these far away, not so detailed flowers. Then there were some other details like the balcony table and the swirly balcony rail that also required a small brush and a lot of concentration. All in all, I think I spent about 10 hours on this painting if you count the sketching and computer editing parts, so it's definitely an involved piece and all these details are gonna take a while. So if you've tried something like this and feel like it's taking forever, you're probably not doing anything wrong. It's just how it is, and it's the same for everyone else, no matter what's your experience level. But at this stage, I felt like the main base of the painting was done, and now it was just time to start adding some final polishing, like cleaning up some messy areas, adding more lights and shadows, and also editing a few parts that I still wasn't happy with. I knew that this was definitely one of those paintings I needed to touch up quite a lot digitally, because it's just really difficult to create small, sharp lines and details with paints, and I knew I wanted to brighten up some of the light reflections and add some glow to the lights as well. So keeping that in mind, I just wanted to add some more overall definition here. I think at this point it's kind of difficult to even see what I'm doing here because the difference is so subtle and gradual, but I was just adding more of those warm highlights all over the place, especially on the doors, and I also fixed the curtains a bit because those were definitely something I wasn't that happy with. I also decided to add quite a lot of leaves and make all the plants bigger because I felt like the area around the door frame looked a bit lifeless. So I added these light leaves also kind of on the balcony side, and I think it helped at least a little bit. But after all the endless detailing, I finally decided to put down my brush and scan this to my computer and see what I could do to fix the few things I still wasn't happy with. Obviously, this is very extra if you're just painting for your journal. I'd never go through this much trouble if that were the case, but I create these bigger paintings to sell in my shop. So I definitely want them to be the best version I can possibly create. So that's why I do all these extra steps. So the first thing I wanted to fix were the colors. I didn't want to get rid of the blue color completely by any means, but I just wanted to add a bit more dimension to it. So I added some warmth and toned the colors a little bit more towards lilac, and I think it already helped a lot. I also always go over the whole painting to remove any dust or pencil lines, and I also cleaned up the painting quite a lot this time. Especially the window frame looked a bit wonky here and there. I know some people might think that I'm fixing some things that give character to something that was painted by hand and shouldn't even be perfect. And I completely understand that point of view, but I personally like the idea of mixing digital and traditional art and taking advantage of everything in your arsenal to fix and perfect these things to get an end result that you're personally happy with. So yeah, I also added some white highlights and added the glow effect as I mentioned earlier, and in the end, even though the overall difference is quite small, you can really see it when I compare the fixed version with the original one. But now that we're finally done with the painting, I printed it out in the correct size. The printing always slightly changes the colors and blurs some of the details, unfortunately, but after all the effort, I was still quite happy with this finished piece. Then I'll also show you these few papers we're gonna use to add some decorations to this romantic Paris theme, and then I just glued the painting to the right side using my dot liner. Now all we have left here is to finish the left side, and I started here with this box that we're gonna use for the monthly calendar. I thought that this very cool toned pink was a nice combination with all the blue and violet tones in the painting. And as always, I'll add this specific color to the free section on my shop where you can download many of these individual colors or color palettes and textures I've created throughout the years, and a link to that will be in the description as well. I also added these lace corners under the box, which you can barely see in the video. I actually tried to add some light shadow under them with a brush pen, but I didn't really like how it looked, so I ended up covering them. Then after drawing the calendar, we're gonna write this large June title here at the center. I don't know why my hands were shaking so much here. I was probably on my second cup of coffee, so whenever that happens, I try to fix the situation with these thicker lines that can hide most imperfections. Then I just added some of these weekday letter stickers here to finish things off. These are from my own shop as well, but you could of course just write them out by hand. Then we are finally done with the cover spread, which took forever as per usual. But now let's move on to the next spread, which will be for the monthly planning. I started here with the title once again and decided to change the font slightly. I tried to create this traditional looking calligraphy font with quite thick downstrokes, and after that I added some of the cool pink paper and text scribble paper on this spread. I have some similar scribble papers in my shop, but this specific one will be part of the upcoming collection. However, you could just replace this with another solid color or use any kind of scribble washi tapes or even old book pages to create a similar effect. I added these 4 boxes on the left page that I'm gonna use for habit tracking, and then I spent a few minutes to draw this slightly decorated box. This is nothing fancy, but I thought it would add a tiny bit of interest here on the spread, and I personally connect Paris with all these swirly balcony rails, decorative old buildings and so on, which always inspires me to add some swirls to the drawings. And I'll use this box to write about the June focus. So basically, I'll just take a moment to get clear of what I want to achieve in the upcoming month. I've said this many times, but doing this helps me to narrow down and find the necessary things. I think we can all agree that many things feel important, but only a few are actually necessary. And those are the ones I want to get out of the way no matter what. Then I list 3 of the most important tasks in June, and on the next page I started with this yearly goals checking. I'll start a new bullet journal in June, which means that it's time to rewrite my goals section, so I see this kind of as a jump start to that process. But now that all the planning stuff is done, we can move on to create this one bigger decoration element here. I actually didn't remember that I drew this type of old street lamp also in my previous Paris theme, and it's even in the exact same spot of the spread, so I'm sorry for repeating that. However, I hope you can still enjoy this drawing process. I started from the pencil sketch that I actually filmed this time. I'll draw this with a very loose and scribble style, so this whole drawing actually won't take that much time. It's much easier than it looks too. So first I just wanted to confirm all the main lines with a pencil. I kept the lamp shape itself pretty basic, and then wanted to add some variation and decoration to the leg part. I was looking through some pictures of real lamps like this to get a better idea for these leg details, and then went ahead and also added this swirly side thingy, which I'm not sure what it is, but I think it matched the drawing. After the pencil sketch, I took out a black micron and started to intensify all the lines while also drawing these quick shadows, mainly on the left side of this whole thing. Again, I'm not trying to be careful here because I think this messy, sketchy look especially fits drawings that are gonna be quite dark at the end. Still leaving some white gaps and areas is gonna serve as highlights, and it also helps to tell apart different sections of the drawing. At the very end, we're gonna add the quickest wash of watercolors here to mainly add this yellowish glow to the lamp, but I also went over the rest of the drawing with some black and dark blue shades. So yeah, this is a surprisingly fun and quick drawing that still draws attention to this otherwise pretty simple spread. But that's it for the planning spread, and now let's move on to the last Dutch door layout of this setup, where we'll combine the weekly pages and a monthly reflection at the end. I started first by cutting out the edges of the next 2 pages. However, if you like to use more space for your weekly setup, feel free to double the page amount here. Then I wanted to create some very simple decorations here, so I went with this half circle border, and then we'll add the white lace paper in the corners. I'll show you every step here of how to create the border. So I used a ruler and the dot grid to help me get an even spacing for these. One of my half circles is 4 dots high and roughly 1 or 1.5 dots wide. And then I just repeated that for the whole paper stripe. After that, we'll just cut out the excess and we have ourselves a cute romantic border that you can further decorate if you so please. So after repeating the same thing for all the other borders, I glued all the pieces to the page and then added the white lace, which I actually wasn't completely happy with, but decided to just go with it. Then I drew the most minimal decorations to these half circles that I think brings a little bit more attention to them. And then I started to fill the middle of the page. I first drew this double line all across the Dutch door shape on these edge pages. And then I'll show you how I'll set up the first 2 weeks in June. The first week will be my shop launch week, which is always pretty hectic for me, and I don't really need a daily to-do list because those will pretty much be the same every day, which is just prepare products and pack as much as you can. So instead, I thought I would benefit more from having this overall weekly task list where I can write out all the separate tasks in more detail and get them done at any point of the week whenever I have time. I still wrote this small weekly thing on the left side that I can use to mark any appointments or something that only requires 1 or 2 rows. But then the second week will be a little bit more standard weekly layout for me. So here I spaced out the days a little bit more. So I have a few rows to write some important tasks for each day. And then I used the smaller side space for any notes I might have during this week or any point of the month. I was using some of my own weekday stickers here again, and then these number stickers by Etchr papier that perfectly matched the color scheme. I set up the last 2 weeks later. They will probably be something very similar. So now let's jump to the final spread of this layout, which is the monthly reflection. We'll start with another bigger title here using the same cursive font, and then I wanted to draw another one of these slightly decorated boxes. This time I went with a little bit different shape and added some small quick swirls to the corners before coloring the edges with the same blue-violet colored brush pen that we've used in this video. I'll use this box to write about whatever is on my mind at the end of the month when I sit down to fill this spread. Then under this one I wrote out this top faves title. And this will be just a little bit reduced version of the favorites section I often have on my reflection pages. So I can just write 5 random things that are my favorites from the past month, which can be anything from books and hobbies to movies or memories or something like that. But then let's move on to the last page, and I kept things very simple here too. I'll first save some space to reflect on how my shop launch went. I'm still so new to having my shop that I learned something new from every launch, and I try to get better at preparing and predicting how much I need to prepare certain products and so on. But you could of course use this space for something that fits your life better, maybe a monthly hobby roundup or a gratitude log or whatever you feel like you need. And then I'll divide the rest of the space here to list a few things that I feel like I did well and a few things I need to work on moving forward. So that's finally all for this romantic Paris-inspired theme. I know some of these pages look a little bit empty, but I think I'll fill some of this space with the new collection items once I get all of them done. I guess I could film like a YouTube short filling this space with some stickers. Don't hold me on that though, I'm very bad at filming shorts. But anyway, I still really hope you enjoyed this video and found something that you want to try out. And if this was your first time around here and you'd like to stay tuned for more, please consider subscribing. But I guess that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a lovely day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye!